Marcus Chun stepped off the transport ship and immediately felt every eye in the landing bay watching him. The Galactic Coalition's most famous military academy stretched out before him like a metal city. Vextar Prime was huge, bigger than anything he had ever seen on Earth. But it was not the size that made his stomach twist. It was the silence. Every alien student in the bay had stopped what they were doing to stare at him. Some pointed. Others whispered in languages he could not understand. A few laughed, showing teeth that could easily bite through steel. Marcus picked up his single bag and walked forward. He was the first human ever accepted to Vextar Prime. The Coalition had called it a historic moment. The news feeds back home had called him a pioneer. Right now, walking through a crowd of alien warriors who looked like they wanted to step on him, Marcus felt more like a bug. A towering figure blocked his path. The creature stood over 12 feet tall, covered in thick gray plates that looked like natural armor. Its yellow eyes studied Marcus like he was something interesting it had found on its shoe. So, the giant said in perfect standard, "This is what Earth sends us. I am Thrakvar of the Govani. You are the human." Marcus looked up at the massive alien. "Yes, I'm Marcus Chun." Thrakvar's mouth opened, showing rows of sharp teeth in what might have been a smile. "I have heard much about humans. They say you are weak. They say you break easily. They say you cry when hurt." He leaned down closer. "Is this true, human Marcus Chun?" The crowd of aliens had gathered around them now. Marcus could feel their eyes on him, waiting to see what he would do. Some were recording with their devices. Others were making bets in alien languages. "I guess you'll find out," Marcus said. Thrakvar laughed. It sounded like rocks falling down a mountain. "Yes, I think I will." He stepped aside. "Welcome to Vextar Prime, little human. Try not to break on your first day." First day. The crowd laughed and began to break up. Marcus walked toward the main building, his face burning red. Behind him, he could hear Thrakvar talking to another student. "4 years I've been here," the Gorvani was saying. 4 years, and I have never lost a single combat trial. Soon, I will be the youngest apex warrior in my people's history. But this human? He will not last a week. Marcus kept walking. He had expected this. The human military had warned him that the other students would not be friendly at first. They had told him to keep his head down and work hard. They had told him that humans belonged at Vextar Prime just as much as any other species. Looking around at the alien students, Marcus was not so sure. The next few hours were a blur of registration, room assignments, and medical checks. His room was small but clean. His roommate was a Zephyrian named Kix, who moved so fast that Marcus could barely see him when he walked. Kix spoke quickly too, in sharp clicks and whistles. "Human slow," Kix said, appearing suddenly beside Marcus's bed. "Human weak." "Why human here?" "I don't know," Marcus said honestly. Kix laughed and vanished in a blur of motion. The first real test came during physical evaluation. All new students had to run through a basic obstacle course. Marcus watched the other aliens go first. They were incredible. The Krillians jumped 50 feet in a single leap. The Zephyrians moved like lightning. The Gorvani smashed through walls that were meant to be climbed over. When Marcus's turn came, the watching students began to whisper and point again. The course instructor, a stern Krillian with 4 arms, looked at his tablet. "Human Marcus Chun," she announced. "Begin when ready." Marcus started running. The first obstacle was a 30-foot wall. The other students had either jumped it or punched through it. Marcus looked for handholds and began to climb. The watching aliens laughed. "Look at it struggle," someone called out. "Is it broken?" Asked another. Marcus reached the top of the wall after 2 minutes. The fastest alien had cleared it in 3 seconds. He jumped down and kept going. The next obstacle was a series of moving platforms over a pit. The other students had used their speed or strength to cross easily. Marcus had to time each jump carefully, studying the pattern. More laughter came from the crowd. The rope climbing section was worse. Marcus's arms burned as he pulled himself up hand over hand. Below him, he could hear the aliens making jokes about soft human skin and weak human muscles. He finished the course dead last. His time was so slow that the instructor had to check her equipment to make sure it was working correctly. When she announced his result, the entire crowd burst into laughter. "Pathetic," said a Krillian student. "My grandmother could do better. And she has been dead for 50 years, added a Zephyrian. Thrakver stood at the back of the crowd, watching but not laughing. His yellow eyes followed Marcus as he walked off the course. That night in the dining hall, Marcus sat alone. The alien students filled the room with loud conversations in dozens of languages. No one tried to sit near him. When he got up to get food, aliens would step aside as if he might contaminate them. The food itself was another problem. Most of it was designed for alien digestive systems. Marcus found some protein bars that were marked as safe for carbon-based life forms and sat back down. "Enjoying your meal?" Marcus looked up. Thrakver stood over him, holding a tray loaded with what looked like raw meat. "It's fine," Marcus said. Thrakver sat down across from him without being invited. "You know, human, I have been thinking about you." "Oh?" "Yes. I have been wondering why the Coalition would send something so weak to a place like this. Perhaps it is a joke. Perhaps they want to see how long you last before you run home crying." Marcus met the alien's yellow gaze. "Maybe they sent me here to learn something." "Learn what?" "How to lose." Thrakver tore off a chunk of raw meat with his teeth. "You failed every test today. You are slower than our youngest students. You are weaker than our maintenance robots. What exactly do you think you can learn here?" Marcus thought about that. "I don't know yet." Thrakver laughed again. "Honest, at least. Most species would make excuses." He leaned forward. "Tell me, human, what do your people call someone who never gives up, even when they should?" "Stubborn," Marcus said. "Interesting. My people call them dead." Thrakver stood up. "Sleep well, Marcus Chun. Tomorrow will be much harder than today." As the Gorvani walked away, Marcus finished his protein bar and looked around the dining hall. Every alien in the room was bigger, faster, or stronger than him. Every one of them belonged here more than he did, but he was here anyway. And tomorrow, no matter how hard it was, he would still be here. Maybe that would have to be enough. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus arrived at Vextar Prime. 3 weeks of being last in every race, weakest in every strength test, and slowest in every drill. The other students had stopped laughing at him. Now they just ignored him completely. Marcus was cleaning equipment in the armory when the emergency alarms started blaring. Red lights flashed throughout the building. All students were ordered to report to the main briefing room immediately. The room was packed with alien cadets when Marcus arrived. At the front, Commander Velther, a 6-armed Nexus with silver skin, stood before a large display screen. "Students," the commander began, "we have received a real distress signal. The research vessel Infinite Dawn has crashed on the planet Kethmoran. 7 scientists are trapped aboard." The display showed a dark, twisted world covered in thick forests and jagged mountains. Even in the pictures, Kethmoran looked dangerous. "This is not a drill," Commander Velther continued. "We need a rescue team. Only our best students should volunteer." Hands shot up across the room. Thrakver stood up immediately. "I volunteer to lead the mission," the Gorvani said. His voice was calm and confident. "Accepted," the commander replied. "Choose your team." Thrakver pointed to 6 other students. All were top performers from different species. Strong, fast, skilled fighters. Marcus was not surprised when his name was not called. "Sir," Thrakver said to the commander, "we will also need communication support. Someone to monitor transmissions and coordinate with the Academy." He looked directly at Marcus. "I request a human for this role." Marcus felt every eye in the room turn to him. The other students whispered among themselves. Some laughed quietly. Commander Velther looked puzzled. "The human? Are you certain?" "Yes, sir. Humans are supposed to be good with technology. Are they not?" "Let him prove it." Marcus knew this was not kindness. Thrakver was giving him the safest job on the mission. Communication support stayed with the ship while the real warriors did the dangerous work. "Very well," the commander said. "Prepare for departure in 1 hour." The ship that took them to Kethmar was fast and well armed. Marcus sat in the back, monitoring radio equipment while the other team members checked their weapons. The aliens talked in low voices about their combat experience and past victories. No one spoke to Marcus. Kethmar looked even worse up close. The planet's surface was covered in thick, dark vegetation that moved in ways that had nothing to do with wind. Strange sounds echoed from the forest below. The crashed research ship was visible as a twisted wreck near the base of a mountain. "Landing in 30 seconds, announced the pilot. They sat down in a small clearing near the crash site. The moment the doors opened, Marcus could smell the planet. It smelled like decay and something else. Something predatory. "Remember," Thrakver told the team as they gathered outside, "we going fast. Find the survivors and get out. This planet is classified as hostile for a reason." The team moved toward the crashed ship in formation. Marcus stayed with their transport, setting up communication equipment. He watched them disappear into the twisted metal of the wreck through his monitor screen. For 20 minutes, everything went according to plan. The team found 4 survivors in the ship's emergency compartment. They were injured, but alive. Thrakver's voice came through clearly on the radio. "Base camp, this is Alpha Team. 4 survivors recovered. Moving to Search Grid 2 for the remaining 3. "Understood, Alpha Team," Marcus replied. "All clear on scans." But it was not all clear. Marcus noticed something strange on his sensor display. Heat signatures were moving through the forest around them. They were big, but they seemed to appear and disappear randomly. "Alpha Team," Marcus called into his radio. "I'm seeing unusual readings. Multiple large contacts moving in your area." "Confirmed," came Thrakver's voice. But now it sounded tense. "We see them too. Moving to..." The transmission cut to static. Marcus tried to re-establish contact. "Alpha Team, respond." "Alpha Team, do you copy?" Silence. Then screaming came through the radio. Alien voices crying out in fear and pain. The sound of weapons firing. Something roared in the background, a sound unlike anything Marcus had ever heard. "Alpha Team," Marcus shouted into his microphone. "Alpha Team, respond." Through the static, he heard Thrakver's voice, faint and broken. "Base camp. Under attack. Something hunting us. Crescent Jinner down. We're falling back, too." The transmission died completely. Marcus stared at his equipment. Every screen showed the same thing. No signals from any member of the rescue team. As far as his instruments could tell, they had simply vanished. He grabbed the emergency procedures manual and searched through it frantically. Protocol was clear. If contact was lost with a ground team, the support crew was to return immediately to base and report the situation. Marcus looked at the dark forest where his teammates had disappeared. 7 scientists were still missing somewhere on this planet. Now 7 more Academy students were lost as well. If he followed protocol and left, 14 people would die. He thought about what Threkver had said on his first day. "Tell me, human, what do your people call someone who never gives up, even when they should?" Marcus started putting on environmental gear. "Stubborn," he said to himself. He checked his pulse rifle and grabbed extra power cells. The weapon was basic, designed more for training than real combat. Against whatever was hunting in these forests, it would probably be useless. Marcus activated the ship's automatic beacon and locked the transport down. If anyone came looking for them, they would find the ship. He left a message in the computer explaining what he was doing and why. Then he walked into the forest. Alone. The trees on Kethmorum were wrong. They were too tall, too twisted, and they moved too much. Marcus could hear things in the branches above him, but when he looked up, he saw nothing. The air was thick and humid, and every breath tasted like metal. He followed the team's last known path using his scanner. The device could track the unique energy signatures from their equipment. The trail led deeper into the forest, toward the mountain where the research ship had crashed. Marcus moved carefully, trying to make as little noise as possible. But with every step, he felt like he was being watched. Sometimes he caught movement from the corner of his eye, but when he turned to look, there was nothing there. The trail ended at a clearing filled with strange, glowing crystals. Marcus's scanner showed recent energy weapon discharge here. He found scorch marks on the trees and what looked like alien blood on the ground, but no bodies, no equipment. The rescue team had simply vanished. Marcus studied the scene carefully. The weapon marks were scattered randomly, like the team had been firing at targets they could not see clearly. The blood was splattered in a pattern that suggested the aliens had been dragged away, not killed on the spot. Something had taken them alive. Marcus checked his scanner again. There was still one faint signal coming from deeper in the forest. It was weak, but it matched Threkver's equipment signature. Marcus looked at the dark trees ahead of him. Whatever had taken the rescue team was probably still out there, waiting. His weapon would not save him if these things decided to attack, but Threkver was alive. Maybe the others were too. Marcus adjusted his grip on his rifle and started walking toward the signal. Behind him, something howled in the distance. The sound echoed through the forest like a promise of death. "Stubborn," Marcus whispered to himself again, and kept walking into the darkness. Marcus followed Threkver's signal deeper into the forest for 2 hours. The trees grew stranger as he moved toward the mountain. Some had leaves that glowed softly in the darkness. Others had bark that looked like metal. All of them seemed to watch him as he passed. The signal led him to the mouth of a cave system. The opening was perfectly round, too perfect to be natural. Strange symbols were carved around the entrance, symbols that hurt to look at directly. Marcus checked his scanner. Threkver's signal was coming from deep inside the cave. But there was something else. The scanner was picking up multiple life signs moving in patterns throughout the cave system. Whatever had taken the rescue team was down there with them. Marcus activated his rifle's flashlight and stepped into the cave. The tunnel sloped downward at a sharp angle. The walls were covered in the same strange symbols he had seen at the entrance. His footsteps echoed strangely, as if the sound was being twisted by the tunnel itself. After 10 minutes of walking, Marcus heard something that made him freeze. Voices. Alien voices speaking in languages he recognized. The rescue team was alive. He moved more carefully now, using his flashlight sparingly. The tunnel opened into a large chamber filled with crystal formations that glowed with their own light. Marcus crept to the edge and looked down. The rescue team was there. All 7 aliens sat in a circle in the center of the chamber, their weapons and equipment scattered around them. But something was wrong. They were not tied up or caged. They were just sitting there, staring at nothing. Threkver was among them, the massive Govani warrior, as still as a statue. Marcus was about to call out when he saw The creatures guarding them, they were like living shadows, roughly humanoid in shape, but made of something that bent light around it. Marcus could see them, but his eyes could not focus on them properly. They moved without sound, drifting around the prisoners like smoke, void stalkers. Marcus had read about them in the Academy database, but seeing them was completely different. The files had said they were dangerous predators, but this was something else. This looked like farming. Marcus studied the chamber more carefully. The crystal formations were not natural. They were arranged in specific patterns, connected by lines of metal that ran through the floor. Energy flowed through the connections, pulsing in a steady rhythm. The rhythm matched the breathing of the captured aliens. Marcus realized what he was seeing. The crystals were not just decorations. They were some kind of technology, and they were connected to the prisoners. The void stalkers were not just hunting for food. They were collecting specimens. But for what? A sound from deeper in the cave system answered his question. It was mechanical, rhythmic, like huge gears turning. Marcus followed the sound, staying close to the walls and moving as quietly as possible. The tunnel led to another chamber, this one much larger. What Marcus saw there made him understand why Kethmoran was classified as a forbidden world. The chamber was filled with ancient machines. They were built from metal and crystal, covered in the same symbols he had seen throughout the cave. But these machines were working. Energy flowed through them in complex patterns, and displays showed readings in languages that predated the Galactic Coalition by thousands of years. In the center of the chamber stood something that looked like a massive glass tank filled with swirling liquid. Things floated in the liquid. Pieces of organic matter, fragments of bone and tissue from dozens of different species. A resurrection device. The ancient civilization that had once lived on Kethmoran had built machines to bring their dead back to life. But they had failed and died out long ago. Now their machines continued working automatically, collecting genetic material from any living beings that came to the planet. The Void Stalkers were not predators. They were tools. Biological robots created by the ancient. Machines to gather specimens for the resurrection process. Marcus understood the pattern now. The machines were trying to rebuild their creators, but they needed fresh genetic material to work with. Every species that came to Kethmoran became raw material for their experiments, and the rescue team was next. Marcus crept back toward the chamber where his teammates were held. He had to get them out before the machines decided they had collected enough samples. But how? He was one human with a basic pulse rifle against creatures that could phase in and out of reality and machines that had worked for thousands of years. Marcus thought about the problem like he would any technical challenge. The Void Stalkers were biological machines. They followed programming, just like any robot. The crystals in the chamber were connected to a central network. All the machines in the cave system worked together as one unit. That meant they had a weakness. Every networked system had points of failure. Marcus studied the energy patterns flowing through the crystals. The network had a specific rhythm, a timing that coordinated all the machines. If he could disrupt that timing at the right moment, the entire system might become confused. But he needed to get closer to the prisoners first. Marcus waited until the Void Stalkers had drifted to the far side of the chamber, then climbed down into the crystal formation. He moved carefully between the glowing stones, trying not to touch the metal lines that carried energy through the network. He reached Thrakvar and knelt beside the massive alien. The Gorvani's eyes were open, but they stared at nothing. His breathing was slow and steady, matching the pulse of the crystals. Thrakvar, Marcus whispered. No response. Marcus checked his scanner. The aliens were alive and healthy, but something was suppressing their brain activity. The crystals were keeping them docile while the machines decided what to do with them. Marcus looked at the network of energy, lines running through the floor. If he could overload one of the main connections, It might disrupt the entire system long enough for the aliens to wake up, but overloading the network would definitely get the attention of every Void Stalker in the cave system. Marcus checked his pulse rifle. He had enough power for maybe 20 shots. Against an unknown number of shadow creatures that could phase through solid matter, 20 shots would not last long, unless he made every shot count. Marcus found the largest energy connection near the center of the chamber. It was a thick metal line that seemed to carry power to all the other crystals. He aimed his rifle at the connection and thought about what Thrakvar had said on his first day at the academy. My people call them dead. Maybe, but humans called them heroes. Marcus pulled the trigger. The energy bolt hit the metal connection and overloaded it immediately. Electricity arced through the crystal network, sparks flying in all directions. The steady pulsing rhythm broke apart into chaos. The effect on the prisoners was instant. The aliens blinked, shook their heads, and began to look around in confusion. The effect on the Void Stalkers was immediate too. They all turned toward Marcus at once, their shadowy forms becoming more solid as they prepared to attack. "Wake up!" Marcus shouted to the rescue team. "Get your weapons." Thrakvar's eyes focused on Marcus with surprise. "Human, how did you?" Later, Marcus fired at the nearest Void Stalker. His energy bolt passed right through it. "We need to get out of here now." The aliens scrambled for their weapons as the Void Stalkers closed in. But something strange was happening. The creatures were moving differently now, no longer coordinated. The disruption to the crystal network had confused them. Marcus realized something important. The Void Stalkers were not independent creatures. They were part of the network too. Without the central timing system, they could not phase properly. "Aim for the crystals," Marcus shouted. "Destroy the network." The rescue team opened fire on the glowing formations. Each crystal that shattered made the Void Stalkers more solid, more vulnerable. Soon the aliens were able to hit the creatures directly. The Void Stalkers dissolved when shot, fading away like smoke. This way, Marcus led them toward the tunnel he had come from. Behind them, alarms began blaring throughout the cave system. The ancient machines had detected the damage to their network. They ran through the tunnels as mechanical sounds echoed around them. The resurrection devices were shutting down, but not before releasing more Void Stalkers to stop the escaping prisoners. Marcus and the rescue team fought their way through the cave system, destroying crystal formations whenever they found them. Each destroyed crystal made their escape easier. They reached the surface just as the sun was setting. Behind them, the cave entrance collapsed as the ancient machines finally failed completely. "How did you know?" Thrakvar asked as they walked back toward their ship. "How did you understand what those machines were doing?" Marcus thought about that. "I guess I looked at it differently. You saw dangerous predators. I saw a technical problem that needed to be solved." Thrakvar stared at him for a long moment. "You came after us alone, with insufficient weapons, against unknown enemies. Yes, that was extremely foolish. Probably. It was also—" Thrakvar paused, searching for the right word. "Courageous." Marcus looked at the massive Gorvani warrior. For the first time since arriving at the academy, he saw something other than amusement in those yellow eyes. He saw respect. The news of the Kef Morn rescue spread through Vextar Prime within hours of their return. 7 Academy students had been saved from certain death on one of the galaxy's most dangerous worlds. The official reports praised the entire rescue team for their bravery and quick thinking, but the real story was different. And everyone knew it. Marcus sat in the medical bay while doctors checked him for exposure to alien pathogens. Through the window, he could see other students gathering in small groups, talking quietly and looking in his direction. The whispers had changed. They were no longer mocking. The human went after them. Alone, he heard a Krillian student say, with just a basic pulse rifle, added a Zephyrian. Thrak. Vior has not spoken of what happened down there, said another voice. But something has changed. Marcus finished his medical exam and walked to the dining hall. For the first time in weeks, the conversations died down when he entered. Students watched him with curiosity instead of contempt. He got his food and looked for an empty table. Before he could sit down, Threkver appeared beside him. Human, the Gravani said quietly. Sit with me. It was not a request. They sat at Threkver's usual table in the center of the dining hall. Other students stared openly now. The Apex Warrior candidate never shared his table with anyone, let alone the Academy's weakest student. You have not told anyone what really happened in those caves, Threkver said. Marcus poked at his protein bar. Neither have you. No, I have been thinking about it. About what I saw down there. Threkver tore off a piece of his raw meat. Tell me, human, how did you know the creatures were connected to the crystal network? I watched them for a while before I acted. Their movement patterns were too coordinated to be natural. They moved like drones following programming. And the machines? The energy flow patterns were obviously artificial. Plus, the chamber layout suggested a central processing system. Everything was connected. Threkver nodded slowly. You saw connections that none of us noticed. Even when we were trapped in that place, we only saw individual threats. You saw the whole system. Marcus shrugged. Different perspective, I guess. Yes, different. Threkver was quiet for a moment. I have been the strongest student at this academy for 4 years. I have won every combat trial, broken every strength record. I thought that made me the best warrior here. You are the best warrior, Marcus said. Am I? In those caves, my strength was useless. My combat training meant nothing. The most feared student in the academy was trapped like a helpless child. Threkver looked directly at Marcus. But you were not helpless. You found a way to win. Marcus did not know what to say to that. There is a strategic simulation tomorrow, Threkver continued. Advanced combat scenario. Final year students only. I want you to participate. I'm not a final year student. You are now. I spoke with Commander Velther. Given your performance on Kethmorn, you have been moved to advanced tactical studies. Marcus blinked in surprise. I don't know anything about advanced tactics. No, but you know something else. Something we need to learn. Threkver stood up. The simulation begins at 0800 hours. Be ready. The next morning, Marcus found himself in the Academy's main strategy center. The room was filled with the Academy's best students. All final-year cadets who would graduate as officers in various military organizations throughout the galaxy. Commander. Velther stood before a massive display screen showing a detailed star map. The scenario is simple, the commander announced. You are defending Research Station Omega against a fleet of enemy ships. Your defensive force is outnumbered 3-1. Your weapons are limited. Your shields are failing. You have 1 hour to develop a strategy that will save the station and its civilian population. The students were divided into teams of 6. Marcus found himself assigned to Threkvar's team, along with 4 other top students. They moved to their planning table and began studying the tactical display. The situation looked hopeless. The enemy fleet had overwhelming firepower. The research station's defenses were weak. Any direct confrontation would end in complete defeat. We need to hit them hard and fast, said Crix, a Zephyrian tactical specialist. Strike their command ship before they can coordinate their attack. Impossible, replied Vex. A 4-armed nexus. Their escort ships would destroy us before we got close. Then we use the station's defensive platforms to create a crossfire pattern, suggested Horth, a Krillian heavy weapons expert. force them into a killing zone. Thrakver shook his head. The platforms do not have enough firepower. We would delay them, not stop them. The team spent 40 minutes developing and rejecting strategy after strategy. Nothing worked. The enemy force was simply too strong. 10 minutes remaining, announced Commander Velther. Marcus had been quiet during most of the planning session, studying the tactical display and running calculations in his head. Now he looked up at his teammates. What if we do not try to stop them? He said. The others stared at him. What do you mean? Asked Thrakver. Marcus pointed at the display. Everyone is trying to find a way to defeat the enemy fleet. But what if that is not the real objective? The objective is to defend the research station, Vex said impatiently. No, the objective is to save the civilian population. Those are two different things. Marcus manipulated the display, highlighting different elements of the scenario. Look at the enemy approach vector. They are coming straight at the station, all weapons focused forward. They expect us to meet them head-on, because that is what any logical defender would do, Horth said. Exactly. But what if we are not logical? Marcus expanded the display to show the entire star system. There is an asteroid field 12 million kilometers away. Dense, difficult to navigate, perfect for hiding things. Crix leaned forward. What kind of things? The civilian population. We evacuate everyone to the asteroid field before the enemy arrives. Then we use the station itself as bait. Bait for what? Thrakver asked. Marcus smiled. For the biggest explosion this star system has ever seen. He outlined his plan quickly. Instead of trying to fight the enemy fleet, they would evacuate all civilians and secretly plant explosives throughout the research station. When the enemy ships moved in to capture the station, they would trigger a massive detonation that would destroy both the station and the attacking fleet. The enemy expects us to value the station more than victory, Marcus explained. They think we will try to save the facility. But if we are willing to sacrifice the station, we can turn their strength against them. The room fell silent as the team considered the plan. It would work, Vex said slowly. They would never expect us to destroy our own facility. The explosion would be enormous, added Horth. The station's power core alone would take out half their fleet. But we lose the research station, Crix pointed out. Buildings can be rebuilt, Marcus said. People cannot be brought back from the dead. Thrakver stared at the tactical display for a long moment. Then he turned to Marcus. You would sacrifice victory to save lives? I would sacrifice property to save lives. There is a difference. Most species would consider the loss of such a valuable facility to be defeat, regardless of casualties. Marcus shrugged. Most species are not human. Thrakver began to smile. Submit the plan. They presented their strategy to Commander Velther with 30 seconds to spare. The other teams had developed conventional tactical approaches, all of which relied on somehow defeating a superior enemy force through clever maneuvering or superior firepower. Marcus's team was the only one that suggested destroying the thing they were supposed to protect. When the simulation ran, their plan worked perfectly. The enemy fleet moved in confidently to capture what they thought was a defended research station. Instead, they flew into the largest explosion in the Academy's simulation history. Total enemy casualties: 100%. Friendly casualties: 0. Mission objectives achieved with minimal loss of life. Commander Velther stared at the results for a full minute before speaking. In 20 years of running this simulation, she said finally, no team has ever achieved a complete victory with 0 friendly casualties. She looked directly at Marcus. How did you develop this strategy? Marcus thought about that. I guess I approached it differently. Everyone else was trying to win a fight. I was trying to solve a problem. What problem? How to save the most lives with the least risk. The commander nodded slowly. Class dismissed. All teams except Thrakverse. You remain for debriefing. As the other students filed out, Marcus could hear their whispered conversations. 0 casualties. Complete victory. The human did that. How did the human do that? Thrakver placed a massive hand on Marcus's shoulder as they waited for their debriefing. You continue to surprise me, human, the Gorvani said quietly. Perhaps there is more to strength than I understood. The trials of worth came at the end of the academy year, when graduating students demonstrated their skills before representatives from across the galaxy. It was the most important ceremony at Vextar Prime, watched by millions throughout the coalition. Marcus stood with the other final year students in the massive ceremonial arena. Around them, the stands were filled with alien dignitaries, military commanders, and academy staff. Above, floating camera drones captured every moment for broadcast to hundreds of worlds. He still could not believe he was here. 6 months ago, he had been the academy's weakest student. Now he wore the silver insignia of advanced tactical studies and stood among the graduating class. But he was not graduating. Not yet. The trials of worth would determine which students earned their final rank and which would need additional training. Students, announced Grand Admiral Kethver, the Coalition's highest military commander. You have spent years preparing for this moment. Today, you will demonstrate the skills and courage that make you worthy to lead others into battle. The trials began with individual combat demonstrations. One by one, students stepped forward to show their mastery of personal weapons and fighting techniques. Marcus watched Thrakver take his turn. The massive Gorvani moved through the combat forms with deadly grace, his enormous frame flowing like water as he demonstrated techniques that could crush bones or cut through armor. The watching crowd murmured in appreciation. When Thrakver finished, Grand Admiral Kethver stepped forward. Student Thrakver, the Admiral announced, your combat performance has been flawless throughout your time at this academy. You have never lost a single trial. Your instructors report that you are the finest warrior they have ever trained. Thrakver stood at attention. Thank you, sir. Therefore, the Admiral continued, it is my honor to grant you the rank of Apex Warrior, the youngest in Gorvani history. The crowd erupted in cheers. Several alien dignitaries stood to applaud. Apex Warriors were legendary throughout the galaxy. Elite fighters chosen only once every few years. But instead of accepting the honor, Thrakver raised his hand for silence. Grand Admiral, he said, I request permission to speak. Admiral Kethver looked surprised but nodded. Granted. Thrakver turned to face the crowd, his yellow eyes scanning the thousands of faces watching him. For 4 years, I have been the strongest student at this academy. I have won every combat trial. I have broken strength records that had stood for decades. I thought this made me the greatest warrior among us. He paused, his gaze finding Marcus in the group of students. I was wrong. A murmur ran through the crowd. Students and dignitaries alike looked confused. 6 months ago, a human arrived at Vextar Prime. We laughed at him. He was weak, slow, fragile. We thought he did not belong among warriors. Thrakver's voice carried clearly through the arena. Then came the mission to Kethmoran. My team was captured by creatures we could not fight, trapped by machines we could not understand. We were helpless. The greatest students at the most prestigious military academy in the galaxy were reduced to sitting in a cave, waiting to die. The crowd was completely silent now. But one person did not give up. One person came after us, alone, with insufficient weapons against impossible odds. Not because he was strong enough to succeed, but because it was the right thing to do. Thrakver walked over to where Marcus stood. Marcus Chun taught me something about strength. Real strength is not about how hard you can hit or how fast you can run. Real strength is about seeing solutions where others see only problems. Real strength is about choosing to act when action seems hopeless. He stopped directly in front of Marcus. Grand Admiral, honored guests, fellow students, Thrakor said formally, I wish to invoke the Korthani. A shocked gasp ran through the alien dignitaries. Several stood up in surprise. Grand Admiral Kethver's eyes widened. Student Thrakor, the Admiral said carefully, are you certain? The Korthani has not been performed with an alien in over 1,000 years. I am certain, sir. This human has proven himself in battle and in wisdom. He has saved lives at risk to his own. He has shown courage that surpasses physical strength. By the ancient laws of my people, he has earned the right to be called Battle Brother. Thrakor knelt on one knee before Marcus, placing his massive hand on the human's shoulder. Marcus Chen of Earth, he said in a voice that echoed throughout the arena. Your strength is not my strength, but your strength makes mine complete. Your blood is not my blood, but your spirit is my spirit. In battle, we are one. In peace, we are family. The arena was so quiet that Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. Do you accept this bond, Battle Brother? Thrakor asked. Marcus looked at the massive alien kneeling before him. 6 months ago, this same warrior had mocked him as weak and worthless. Now he was offering the greatest honor his people could give. I accept, Marcus said quietly. Thrakor stood and clasped Marcus's hand in both of his own. Then rise. Marcus Chun, Battle Brother of the Govani, Keeper of Wisdom, Savior of the Lost. The crowd exploded. Thousands of aliens rose to their feet, cheering and applauding. The representatives from dozens of worlds stood in recognition. Even Grand Admiral Kethver was applauding, but Marcus barely heard the noise. He was focused on Thrakor's face, on the genuine respect and friendship he saw in those yellow eyes. When the cheering finally died down, Admiral Kethver stepped forward again. Student Marcus Chen, he said formally, while you have not yet completed all requirements for graduation, your actions on Kethmoran and your strategic innovations in simulation have demonstrated exceptional ability. It is therefore my honor to grant you the rank of Strategic Specialist with a recommendation for immediate placement in the Coalition Planning Division. More applause filled the arena. Marcus felt overwhelmed. 6 months ago, he had been a joke. Now he was a graduate of the galaxy's most prestigious military academy. After the ceremony, as students and dignitaries mingled in the reception hall, Marcus found himself surrounded by alien officers wanting to shake his hand or offer him positions in their military units. Remarkable tactical thinking, said Acrylian. General, your approach to problem-solving is most interesting, added a Nexus commander. We could use minds like yours in our intelligence division, offered a Zephyrian. Colonel, Marcus politely thanked them all, but his attention was on a different conversation happening across the room. A group of young aliens, students from the lower years, were talking quietly among themselves. Did you see what happened? One was saying, the human became battle brother to an apex warrior. If Thrakor respects him, then maybe humans are not as weak as we thought. Maybe strength means more than we understood. Marcus smiled. The real victory was not the rank or the recognition. It was the change in how people thought about humanity, about what strength really meant. Thrakor appeared beside him, carrying 2 drinks. You seem thoughtful, Battle Brother, the Gravani said, offering Marcus one of the glasses. Just listening, Marcus replied, taking the drink. Amazing how fast things can change. Yes, 6 months ago, no one would listen to a human at this academy. Now every military unit in the Coalition wants to recruit you. They stood together, watching the crowd of alien officers and dignitaries. What will you do now? Thraker asked. Marcus thought about that. I think I'll take the position with coalition planning. Someone needs to make sure human perspectives are included in our strategic thinking. Good. The galaxy needs more minds like yours. Thraker raised his glass. To unexpected strength. To finding family in unlikely places, Marcus replied. They drank. Two warriors from different worlds who had found brotherhood through mutual respect. Across the reception hall, the young alien students were still talking about what they had witnessed. The story would spread throughout the academy, then to other schools, then to other worlds. The story of how the weakest student at Vextar Prime became battle brother to its strongest. The story of how humanity's greatest strength was not physical power, but the ability to see hope where others saw only despair. The story of why, after today, no one in the galaxy would ever underestimate humans again. In the years that followed, Marcus Chen would become one of the Coalition's most respected strategic planners. His innovative approaches to conflict resolution would save thousands of lives and prevent dozens of wars. But he would always remember this moment, standing beside his battle brother in a room full of allies, watching the galaxy learn a new definition of strength. And somewhere in the crowd, young aliens from dozens of worlds were learning that being different did not mean being lesser. That innovation mattered as much as tradition. That the smallest voice sometimes carried the most important message. The laughter had stopped. Now came understanding. And that, Marcus thought, was worth more than all the individual victories in the galaxy.